surprised by the scale of this attack. One senior official even told us that his hand was literally trembling as he was in the Situation Room writing down notes as Iran was carrying out this attack against Israel. Someone who knows the capabilities of Iran all too well, former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. Matter of fact, he was in the Situation Room with other key Trump cabinet members when Iran's Major General Qasem Soleimani, the brutal military commander responsible for killing hundreds of U.S. service members in Iraq, was killed. Robert, really great to have you. Appreciate you being with us.
Good to be with you, Kara.
So first off, Robert, your immediate reaction when you witnessed last night's attack, were you surprised, like the administration was, with regard to how large the attack was?
Because the Iranians have said for many years that they intend to destroy Israel. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the map, take them out of the Middle East. They supported the attack on October 7th, that brutal terrorist attack from Hamas. So this was Iran crossing a big red line. What was heartening to see here was the response to the missile defense systems, the allied coalition coming together with Jordan and other Arab states and the UK and the US. And then, of course, Israel's phenomenal Iron Dome and Arrow missile systems. They intercepted these missiles and kept the injuries down to one poor Muslim girl who was seriously injured.
And Robert, we were just looking at the picture of you in the Situation Room with Trump that night that Soleimani was killed. And I'm just curious, if you were in the situation, if you were indeed in the Situation Room again last night, what would you have been bringing up? Your advice, your concerns, your strategy?
So, Kara, I think that photos of the al-Baghdadi raid, but I can tell you one thing. President Trump's hands wouldn't have been shaking, and no one's hands would have been shaking in the Situation Room and our administration. We understand the capabilities of Iran, and we have to restore deterrence. We've gotten here because we've had a policy of appeasing Iran. The Biden administration has done some good things in foreign policy. We appreciate the support of Ukraine and you know, up until now, until recently, Israel and Taiwan, but They've attempted to appease Iran. They've tried to buy Iran off. They've given Iran more money in sanctions relief. And keep this in mind, it's quite astounding. They've given Iran more money in sanctions relief and hostage ransoms than we've given Ukraine, Taiwan, and Israel combined. And a lot of that.
So let me stop that foolishness right there. It's like, I tend not to watch much of that, like ABC News, all that kind of stuff. It's mostly crap. You know what I mean? Like regurgitated Nazi propaganda and stupid shit and crap. Like, you get dumber every time you listen to it. But sometimes you have to listen to it, you know, just to see what's going on, what are these people talking about. I mean, even though it's regurgitated crap. So, yeah, as I kind of stated before, you know, right now, the whole Iranian shit is a nothing burger. Right? The Iranians actually are not as much of a problem as I thought they were going to be in the past. Like, they puffed their chests out a lot more than I thought. And basically, the Iranians are a nothing burger. Now, collectively, they could be a problem when you look at Yemen, the Houthis, Iran, Syria, et cetera, but they're no Russia, right? They're no China, they're no Russia. They're basically a nothing burger, and they're kind of scared, right? They strike me kind of coward. They're a little cowardly, right? And they're kind of they do a lot of posturing, but they're more cowards than anything. They don't really want to fight anybody, and not because they're humanitarians. More so probably because they're cowards. You know, I would give them more so cowards than I would, well, you know, they are pragmatic humanitarians. And also they're not built for this fight. And I've said that this is not like the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians. This is not a fight for them. This is a fight for the Lord of Hosts. You see, now they're going to be drawn in But this is not a fight for them. This is not about them. So that's something also you have to understand. This is the precursor to what is really going to happen, and that is the destruction by the Lord of hosts and his armies. The real destruction. As you can see, this whole thing with Iran is a nothing burger, right? As you can see, Ukraine, nothing burger, Iran, Gaza, pretty much a nothing burger in the sense that, it's the same dog and pony show. It's basically, a David versus Goliath situation where you got people that are outclassed, by Satan and his armies, you see, and they may, puff their chests out and beat their chest, but they understand that in this situation, the Antichrist and Satan and his armies are more powerful. And so, they're gonna do more, chest thumping than fighting, in most cases. Now, the more dangerous actors in the whole situation, Russia, China, but even them, you can see that they're constrained and controlled. And is it because they're necessarily humanitarians? I don't think so. I think it's more fear. You know what I mean? And so, pretty much what you're gonna see is this is a nothing burger. So the question is, what is, where are we at now, right? What's gonna happen? And so that just depends on what they want, because it's a big show at this point. The Iranians are nothing burger, the Russians, Chinese, they're nothing burger. The big show is the Lord of hosts and his armies. That's the big show that we're moving into. Not them, not Iran, not Russia, not China. That's nothing compared to what he's going to do to these people, right? What they're going to do is nothing. They're going to get provoked into a situation where they get fucked up properly. That's the way it looks, right? And because, everything is about, with them is just about saving face. It's not really about fighting. Because they're not really, overall, they're not doing any fighting. They're just getting their ass whipped. You know what I mean? That's not a fight. They're just trying to ward off and contain, until they can figure out something to do. But if you look, they're mostly scrambling, right? They're surviving, they're not thriving, you see? And they're not able to actually fight back in a meaningful way, you see? Now, when it comes to people like the Russians, Chinese, they have nukes. So it could get a little more dicey, right? At that point. But overall, they don't really want it. You see? They don't really want it. And like I said, what is it because they're humanitarians? No, I wouldn't say that. So the next step is to watch. You're gonna watch what the Israelis do. Now, that's where it gets dangerous, because the Israelis do have the capabilities, and they will hurt the Iranians. You see, and once they go there, then there's no turning back. Right? That's the next move. They're probably gonna strike the Iranian homeland. Like they may bomb Tehran. They may, you know what I mean? And then once that happens, then the shit gets out of control. See, when you'll know when it's out of control, because the only thing the Iranians really got, they can close the Strait of Hormuz. Right? And if they close the Strait of Hormuz, then, which is only real situation, I think, that the only real leverage they got, right, is that they can attack ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and they can do that in a guerrilla form for a very long time, because it's right along their coastlines. And so they probably have batteries set up where I don't know how good their air defense systems is. We're about to find out, because more than likely the Israelis are going to attack. They're going to launch a limited attack on Iranian soil, right? Because that's what they've been wanting to do for a long time. One, and two, Netanyahu has to keep this going to stay in power. And the only way he can keep it going, he has to attack Iranian soil, right? And the Iranians, he can see they're only going to do symbolic gestures. They're not going to really attack Israel. Like, if they got hypersonics, they could have used them. They didn't. So, I mean, the capabilities and what they did was like the weakest shit in the world. Like, they're gonna get annihilated fighting. If that's the best they got, and if that's how they plan on fighting, engaging the Israelis in the U.S., they're gonna get annihilated. You know what I mean? Like, within, it'll be another Iraq. Like, they'll just shock and awe their ass and annihilate them. And so if that happens, then you'll see that they just a paper tiger. And then their only recourse would be to do guerrilla attacks in the Strait of Hormuz. You see, and so that might be where this is going. And when it gets to that point, like where they totally annihilate Iran, and then they go into then they only have like guerrilla attacks in the Strait of Hormuz and the Yemenis in the Red Sea. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's problematic, but will they then attack other assets? I don't know. I mean, from what they're doing right now, they don't look like they really built for this. They don't look like they got anything. Like, it looks like their capabilities are more, they've done a lot of showboating, but it's all fluff, from what I'm saying. It's pretty much all fluff. And, but they will create a problem in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that's a given. And how long they can sustain that, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, how long can they sustain an operation along the Strait of Hormuz, along their coast? It's kind of different, because then the U.S., Israel have to send ships into the strait to fight them off of their coast to Iran. Now, they're not that effective against the Yemenis, and so they may have problems there. But as far as doing like strikes on Iran, like they did in Iraq, Afghanistan, stuff like that, well, they can do that all day long. And I doubt very seriously the Iranians have defensive capabilities that could stop most of what they're going to do to them. So the next step is waiting to see how the Israelis respond, which they're going to escalate because they have no choice. The government, the regime in Iran, and in Israel, has no choice but to escalate, to stay in power. That's the dangerous part of this, right? And so they're going. That's no question. They're going to escalate that. They're going to fire on Iranian soil, because that's what they wanted to do anyway. And looks like the Iranians, they don't have the juice, right? But that doesn't mean it's not going to get stupid for a while. It's going to drive up gold, silver, oil prices, commodities, shipping costs, things like that, inflation. And it's going to cause problems with the economy. But that's about it. It's not going to cause like any nuclear strikes, anything like that, because the Iranians ain't got the juice. Those groups in that area look to be a lot weaker than even I thought. Like, I thought they were a lot stronger, but they look to be extremely weak. Even feeble. I overestimated them. I thought they had like a better drone program. I just thought they were more formidable, and it looks like they like probably 100. I would say at least 80% less feeble than formidable than I thought they were. Like, they look like shit to me. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like they're not a threat at all. And like I said, the worst case scenario, they're gonna create a problem in the Strait of Hormuz. That's it. Now they may be able, now that's something that could, from a Vietnam standpoint, they could do for a very long time, depending on how dug in they are along that strait. They could launch attacks along the Strait of Hormuz and shut that down for a very long time because it's right off of their coast. But a sustained fight between Israel, the United States, and Iran and their proxies, to me, they got nothing. From what I'm saying, like, that's not even an issue. Like, that's just all for the cameras and shit, as far as, like, propaganda. So, but, like I said, the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea, now that could be a problem, because they can run operations off. That's right off of their coast. They own that. They can probably run operations in there, in that area, and create havoc for who knows how long, right? But the U.S. and Israel are going to pound their asses. You know, they'll pound Tehran, they'll pound all the surrounding cities, the areas. They can pound that shit at will indefinitely. And they're probably going to start doing that, right? They're going to probably not launch strikes, launch a few strikes directly on Iranian soil. And it's going to be way worse than what the Iranians did. Like, the Iranians, they launched a bunch of shit in the air for fireworks that people could shoot down and they could beat their chest about. The Israelis are not going to do that. They're going to level, like, parts of cities. If they decide to, which I think they're going to do. Like, I predicted they're probably going to launch missile strikes on, like, military sites in Iran, and they're going to level that shit. Just like they leveled the Iranian consulate in Syria. They're going to level, like, buildings. It ain't going to be the shit that they're not going to shoot no 100 drones into the air and then tell you about it. They're going to level a few areas in Iran and say, now what? That's what's coming next. And then it's going to be devastating to the areas that they hit, unlike the shit that Iranians did. And more than likely, you're going to see another weak response from Iran. The same shit they just did, shoot like 100 drones in the air or whatever, and a couple of missiles. That ain't gonna, that's not doing nothing. And then you're gonna see tit for tat, and they just gonna start leveling their shit. So they got nothing, like I said, until they get to the point where they're shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. It's pretty much a nothing burger until then. You're gonna watch the Iranians get pummeled by Israel and the United States in Iran. It's going to be a shot. They may, I don't know if they're going to launch it. The Americans may not get involved first, but the Israelis definitely going to launch a shock and awe operation on places in Iran, right? And it may be limited in scope at first. You may see like 5 strikes on like buildings, certain buildings, government buildings, different areas, and they're going to level shit. Just like they did the Syrian consulate, and the way they strike Syria, they're going to strike Iran. And the Iranians is going to be another bullshit response. And then you're going to see that go until probably they go into the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to get tired of getting, hammered by the Israelis, and then they'll go into the Strait of Hormuz and start, probably going at ships in the strait. And at that point, then the U.S. will get involved, and then you'll see things expand. Until then, it's a nothing burger. So, yeah, it's a nothing burger. I wouldn't lose no sleep over it until they hit that strait. But when they hit that strait, then you got problems, right? Because then they're gonna shut down oil production coming out of the strait. And when they shut down oil production coming out of the strait and shipping coming out of that strait, all hell gonna break loose as far as the economy. You're looking at, what, I would say probably $7 to $10 a gallon of gas. Pretty much overnight. That shit right there will wreak havoc. So the question, that's what I would watch the Strait of Hormuz. I wouldn't really. They say, oh, Iran shooting drones in there. I would ignore that. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't pay that any attention. What I would pay attention to is Israeli strikes on Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. Those are the two things I would watch, right? The Israeli strikes on Iran, Iranian soil, Tehran, etc. And then from there, they'll probably go to the Strait of Hormuz because obviously they have no way to affect, they have no effective weapons that can really strike Israel. Doesn't look like it. I thought they had hypersonics, but I don't think so at this point. They look pretty weak. So I would look for the Israeli strikes on Iranian soil, and then two, once they get tired of getting pummeled, they'll probably go to the strait and try to shut that down, right? To put pressure on people to stop. The really, they'll cry. That's like a cry uncle. They'll go to the Strait of Hormuz to try to get the people to stop the U.S. and the Israelis from pounding their ass, from doing a shock and awe campaign, which is what's going to happen, right? The U.S. and Israelis going to eventually do a shock and awe campaign on Iran and try to decapitate the government, and then they're going to go into the Strait of Hormuz to try to force a shutdown in the strait, to force other groups like the Europeans to get them off their ass. To say, listen, we'll run guerrilla campaigns in the strait, shut that down, unless you tell the Israelis and the U.S. to stop bombing us. So that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, because they ain't got the juice, obviously. But anyway, we'll wait and see how this plays out. That's all I got for now.